We'll begin. Well, welcome to Sales Advantage Training. We're going to do a series. Ever invite anyone for lunch?
Yeah.
That's a sale.
All right.
In fact, we don't think about it, and most people don't see themselves like this, but we're all in sales all the time. If we're asking to follow our advice, or let's have lunch, or I think we should take this proposal over that proposal, or this project over that project, that's a sale. It is definitely a sale. So we are in the business of influence. And this particular course will take you through the full sales cycle. I'll go through that in a moment. So from end to end, you'll have a very good structure to apply to your sales process. Now, the interesting thing is, most salespeople are not trained. So they get into sales, they don't get much training or no training, and it's very hard. It's very hard because you don't have a good, solid base. Beautiful part of what Robert's providing for you is that beautiful base to have a solid platform for which to drive your sales careers. Because what we're talking about here is a career. We're talking about becoming someone who's exceptionally skilled in sales, who can be very effective in any business, but particularly the business you're in right now. Right? So the objectives for the course are, hi, come on in.
Nice.
We've got 5 of them, and you see here the first one is building self-confidence. Now that sounds simplistic, maybe, but when you think about it, sales is a very emotional business because you can have one meeting and it's really fantastic. This is going great. I'm a star. Wonderful. The next meeting, it doesn't go so well, and you're like, oh, I can't do this, this is a disaster, what happened? So it's a roller coaster. The problem is, how do you maintain and build that confidence regardless of the roller coaster? That's our point. We're trying to keep ourselves always on a very steady platform of confidence, no matter how tough it gets. Communicating value, people talk about price a lot, but we have to communicate value, because you get stuck on talking about price, sales becomes a very hard business to be in. And consultative selling, what this means is we're trying to find out what the client needs, as opposed to I have something or other, I want to sell it, so please buy it. Consultative selling is, what do you need? I might have it, I might not have it. It's a completely different approach. And then, of course, strengthening relationships. The business you're in, the business I'm in, they are not transactional. They are long-term relationship builds. They are attempts to have a customer for life, basically. That's the object. So the approach to the customer is quite different. And then it relates back to this one about the confidence, building a positive attitude, because when it's going well, it's going really well. But when it's going hard, it's very, very tough. And how to be positive in the face of a lot of negative feedback. Not so easy. So there's some of the main things to be covered in this course. And over the course of the program, we will not do the full menu, but we'll probably get from one, building rapport, that's first impression, generating interest, understanding the client, providing solutions, tailoring our solutions to the client need, overcoming objections. These are concerns the client may have about what we're offering. Motive and commitment, this is getting them to agree to proceed. And the last few, we won't probably have time to go through these in this particular course, but these are the main, these 5 are really the main ones for you. So, being Dale Carnegie, we take a human relations approach to selling. It's not about technique, per se. It's not about crafting things in a way that are sort of, what can I say, technical or mechanical. We're really trying to build relationships with people based on trust. Right? That's the object. If I don't trust you, I'm not going to buy from you. If I don't feel comfortable with you, I don't want to spend time with you. So what makes us trustworthy, what makes us likable, comes down to, we might be in a very technical world today. We've got machines that give us unbelievable access to everything all the time. But in sales, it's very hard to go beyond this physical contact of a handshake or a meeting face to face. You can sell certain products on the phone. Yours is not one of them. Be very clear about that. Mine is not one of them either. So face to face is where we want to be. And we're going to start with that first impression. We don't know the client. They don't know us. How do we get that trust? How do we get that, I want to listen to what you've got to say, attitude on the part of the client? So in this first one, we're going to look at some proven processes for doing that and make the buyer eager to talk to you. Right? That's very, very different. And how to have immediate credibility. These are the things we're looking at. So in our cycle of development, we start with, we need a higher skill in sales. Before that though, this is the end result. Before that though, we have to look at attitude. And this is, what are we thinking about this sales process? Okay. What are we trying to achieve here? Are we trying to achieve our bonus? Are we trying to achieve our target? Are we looking at those things? Or is our attitude around, I'm here to serve the client. I'm building a lifelong relationship with this client. I'm looking to solve their problems. I'm looking to build that trust. It's a completely different starting point. If your attitude is, I'm here to make a lot of money and get my big bonus, and I'll do what it needs to do that, that's one type of attitude. In a sales career, that's a short-term attitude. That's a short-term career too. What we should be looking at is, how can I become a partner with the client to solve their problems? How can I help them build their business? Because if I make the pie bigger, I'll get more of that pie. That's a different attitude starting point. So we get our attitude right about what we're doing. Then we're going to give you some knowledge in this training. Some ideas that will help you, some information that will help you. That's all very well. That's fine. The problem with that though is, if it only stays in your head and it doesn't get into your body in practice, then it doesn't go anywhere. And so what we'll be looking for is doing some role plays, doing some practice to try and get it out of your intellectual understanding into your physical doing. Because I can teach you the process and mentally you'll go, I got that, I understand that perfectly. I know, but then when you get into the sales meeting, you don't use it. Oh, I understand, but you're not applying it. That's going to go nowhere. Right? So the point here is to take the knowledge and then apply it and make the practice such that it becomes the new default skill for you. That's the learning process we've discovered over 103 years of being in the training business for training adults. But these are the key points. In particular for sales, we've got to get this right and we've got to get this transfer right to make this the new default skill. So communication is obviously going to be very important. Now, Eunice, when you came in before, you introduced yourself to me. I couldn't catch your name because the way you phrased it was too fast for me. I couldn't clearly hear it. So in sales, communication is obviously going to be a very important thing. I'm going to try and help you a little bit with some areas of that. And it's a very simple exercise. When we met, I asked your name, you told me your name, I couldn't catch it. And that's one of the reasons why salespeople have trouble remembering clients' names. If you go to a networking event, and I hope you'll go to lots of networking events because that's where your clients will be, and you meet 10 people plus maybe, by the time you get to the 10th person, you've probably forgotten the first person's name. And they've probably forgotten your name. So a little practice we're going to do in a moment is how to remember names in terms of getting your own name out there very clearly. Because if they can remember your name, that's a big advantage. Okay. So you'll recall I said, my name is Greg, story. There's a pacing to that, do you hear it? My name is, little pause, Greg, my first name, little pause, then story with a little bit more force than the Greg. My name is Greg Story. That is very easy and clear to understand. I don't have a particularly complicated name, so I'm pretty lucky. But Even if you've got a complicated name, it helps. So we're going to have a little practice here. So try it. My name is, okay, the reason I'm teaching you this is because when you're in a networking event, a noisy environment, it's hard to hear anyway. And there's a lot of action, people moving around, people get distracted. And you meet them. You want them to at least remember who you are. And you'll find that when you meet people, if they mumble their name, or they say it very fast, or they don't say it very clearly, you can't catch it. Never hesitate to ask them to repeat their name, because you really want to try and remember that name. When you hear that name, repeat it in your mind so that it's going in there. Right? You start to push it into their head so you'll keep it in your mind. And when you meet Jamie again, this is very powerful. You haven't seen Jamie for a couple of weeks, and you see him at the next networking event, and you go, Jamie, great to see you again. Now, how do you think Jamie feels?
Crap, what's his name? Great.
How does he feel? Not what does he worry about. How does he feel? Right?
Catch his breath from the train.
It's great.
Well, it's very powerful. When people remember your name, you feel, oh, I'm well regarded. I'm valued. This person has taken the trouble to remember I am a person with this name.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. It's very powerful. So the funny thing though is in sales, very few people have that skill. They forget straight away. Right? It's the good thing about business cards, right? You always go back and see who you met. But this is where trying to repeat the name immediately you meet them, use the name when you're talking to them. Right? It will help you to put it in there, but also get your name out there very clearly. So communication is something we're going to deal with in this course. Now, Carnegie has a number of principles around getting on with people. And again, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. This is, when you're dealing with people, if you criticize what they're doing, complain about what they're doing, they become defensive, they don't like it, they don't like you, you never win the argument. It's a lose-lose. So we try and not get into the business of criticizing others, be it your colleagues, particularly clients, of course. Okay. Find another way of communicating there's an issue without criticizing people, because you'll just hit resistance. And giving sincere appreciation, this is again, the key word there is sincere. There's very little appreciation goes around in this world, actually. So if we can be people who are sincerely appreciating others, we build a very strong base in our human relations skills. So look for things that sincere means it's not flattery, it's not made up. You look for something real, and then you find that thing that's real, and you mention that thing and praise that thing so that it's very concrete. And arouse an eager want. This is, again, we try and have a conversation where the person themselves come to the conclusion, this is good. Now, if you're telling them this is good, that's one level of sophistication. Now, in a sales context, the client might doubt that because you're a salesperson. But if you can have the conversation in such a way that they come to the conclusion that this is good for them, they'll want it. Right? So that's ideal. We're going to try in sales to always have an opportunity to arouse an eager want. Become genuinely interested in other people. And in sales, this is very important. If you're trying to build a relationship with other people, try and find out things about them. Try and find out things that you share, their interests, not in a mechanical, iterative way, sort of grilling them. Oh, I'll get all this information down, how many kids you got, how many cats you got, so I can use this. It's not that type of approach. It's more genuinely trying to know that person, understand what's driving them, understand what their concerns are, so that you can be of greater service. But the key word here is genuinely, not fake interest to manipulate the conversation. Smile. Now, this sounds very simplistic, but amongst your previous salespeople in your company, I've actually met people who don't smile much. And this is the death knell of a salesperson. If you can't smile in sales, change jobs, because that's going to be a problem. We've all got enough pressure in business now without some grumpy, sour-looking person turning up trying to sell us something. So being able to smile is actually a simple but very important thing. And it's got to be a genuine smile. It's going to be something you're feeling good from within, that you're really going to help this person. It comes back to that attitude thing I talked about before. If your perspective on what you're doing here is correct, then you'll naturally want to be the good solution for their problem. And that's a happy thing. So you're naturally going to be happy seeing them smile naturally, because it's very relaxing and it builds trust very fast. But a fake smile, you know, I'm not going to cut it. There's a big difference between the two, but the smile is going to come from inside, from your attitude of what you're trying to do, as opposed from your mind of trying to look friendly. Okay? Use people's names, okay, of course, in the meeting. Don't overdo it, but when you use their name, again, you're building a little bit tighter relationship with people. It's also good for when we're at those networking events, remembering names. But if you're using it every 10 seconds, it starts to become a bit burdensome. People think, what the hell's going on here? This doesn't sound right. So it's got to be something that's in context. And be a good listener. Salespeople invariably are not very good listeners. There's a couple of things going on there, particularly what they want to talk about. So they're focused on what they're going to say. And so they tend to drop off the conversation that's coming from the client. Or they'll hear something the client will say and they'll get excited. Oh, yeah, I have to remember to tell them about this, this, and this that we've got. And with that moment, they're now focused on what they're going to do. And they're not really listening anymore completely to the client. They've got a sort of sub-level of listening. So we've, in sales, got to become extremely good listeners. Now, if you become really good, you're able to hear what they're not saying. Think about that. If you're a really good listener, you're able to hear what they are not saying. Now that is real insight if we get to that point. Right? Because clients won't always tell you everything, and you have to listen for what is not being mentioned, what they're not discussing. And think about, oh, it might be a red flag there. That might be something I'll need to bring up because they're not bringing it up. And talk in terms of their interests. Often in sales, people will turn up with their little bag of tricks there, and they'll have a range of products or services, and so they'll start pulling them out. You know, we have this, not interested. Oh, we have this too, not interested. We have this as well, not interested. Have I shown you this one? And they're talking about what they're selling, what they're interested in. The client couldn't care less about that. They're only interested in themselves. What have you got that's going to solve my problem? Well, that's fine, but their interest is their problem. So how do you know what their problem is? And that's where questioning comes up. And once you know what their problem is, you talk about that. You don't talk about your lineup of what you're going to sell. You talk about their problem, understand it at a higher level. And then you think about, do I have a matching solution for that problem? And then make them feel important. Of course, this is not in the sense of manipulation. Oh, you're so wonderful, what a great client. It's not about that. Make them feel important in a genuine way. Okay, so they feel that they are valued. They feel that you recognize what they're doing. Okay. So there's some basic methodologies to improve relationships. So these apply for your work colleagues as well as your clients. It applies everywhere, basically. So we talked a little bit before about remembering names. And look and listen here is when you meet someone, you get an impression how they are dressed, how they look, wearing glasses, not wearing glasses, you know, and voice. So you start to associate the look and the voice as a memory bank, and you link that to the name. Okay? You try and link the two together, so they've got a certain voice, they've got a certain look, and associate the name with that. Or you get an overall impression. Someone who's very tall, someone who's not so tall, someone who's very, very big, not so big, someone who's very outgoing, not particularly outgoing. There's an impression about that person that you associate, okay, with that person's name. You repeat the name, okay, so you hear it a couple of times. An association, it could be you met them at a certain event, you met them through somebody else, you met them in a certain circumstance, so you associate that meeting of them with the name. Right? So I meet Greg today in training, so I meet Greg in training. I met Greg in training. So that gets locked in. I met Greg in training. So the name is there and the association of where I met is there. And try this when you're out meeting numbers of clients, because you might have more than one person in the room. You might be at a networking event. How many people can I remember the names of immediately after I've met them and then after that? Because there's nothing more powerful than sales. Being able to turn up to another networking function and see someone and go over and say, hi, Greg Story, say your name, I met you recently, great to see you again, Bob, or whoever it is. And one thing too, it's always good to say your name, because as you said before, Johnny, we're hopeless on remembering names, right? So we panic about, oh God, who's this person? They may have the same reaction. So don't make it tough for the client, right? Hi, Greg Story, good to see you again, Jamie. We met at the training, right? Hi, Greg Story, good to see you again, Jamie. We met at the training. See, I connect the things together there. He goes, oh, that's right, yeah, you're Greg Story. Little things, but they add up to a lot when you're trying to build up that trust with people and build an ongoing relationship. So the philosophy for sales Dale Carnegie is, don't see it from your point of view of, I've got deadlines to hit, I've got targets to make, I've got my remuneration, a certain proportion of it is at risk, I've got a certain base, but I've got to make some money by selling. That's all about you. If you look at the sales process from your point of view, you're not going to be that successful in sales. Those who can look at it from the client's point of view, they are the people who are going to be successful, because you'll find matching what you have with what they need. And this is the ultimate process. What is happening? Now, the problem is for us, we can't know everything that's going on in that company. We can't know everything that's going on in their professional life or their personal life. All these things impact. But we can try and see it from their point of view. They may have some pressure from their superiors. They may have some pressure from suppliers. They may have some pressure from their clients. They may have some pressure from exchange rates. They may have some time pressures. They can have any number of pressures. But we try and understand what they are. What are those pressures operating on the client? Because once you know those pressures, you may be the solution. Ideally, that's where we want to go. So the sales model is we start with planning. So when we think about planning, some of you have been in sales, and I'll start with you, Greg. What sort of things can we do in planning before we actually sit down face to face with the client, or even before we call them?
Well, I look at Google.
Sorry, I can't hear
I'd Google the company.
You Google the company? Yeah. Yeah. What would you do, Jamie?
Same thing, Google the company, have a good look through their website.
Look through their website, yeah.
See what other networks, what other companies they work with, see if they have any relationships with those companies too.
See their connections, yeah. What else? Eunice, what would you do?
Pretty much the same.
Pretty much the same, okay. Aaron?
Any recent news stories that they've put on their site or that I found on other sites about their activities?
Yeah, because their site will come up on Google, but maybe some other references will come up to that company on Google as well. Yeah, Joy, what else?
I would ask colleagues if they've had any prior interactions or relationships with the client, if there's any backstory or conversations in progress that they've had or not had.
Anyone heard of LinkedIn?
Good LinkedIn.
Yeah. Would they possibly be on LinkedIn, the person you're meeting? Could be. If you're on LinkedIn, it might be useful just to look on LinkedIn or Google the name of the person you meet. If you Google my name, and I encourage you to try it, you'll find a lot about me. A lot. And same for other senior execs, they will probably have a lot about them. Because if you've been in business for a long time, it just builds up over time. Very useful to know, oh, this person got transferred from Germany a year ago, or 6 months ago, or a month ago, or they went to this university, or they've been posted overseas in America, or they've been in New Zealand, or they've been in South America, or whatever it might be. Then you have some background, and you can mention these things. I was looking at your site, and I also had, I noticed on LinkedIn that you are blah, blah, blah. No one objects to that. And they're mildly flat. Mildly flat. It's not a big deal, they don't care that much, but it says that, hey, you've actually taken a little bit of time to think about this meeting and meeting me. The other thing that's very useful to look at are annual reports of the company. Now, have you ever had a look at an annual report of a company? Anyone? Amazing document. What's an annual report designed to do for the company? What's it designed to do?
P&L.
Now, what's the annual report itself designed to do? What's the key thing?
Cueing the investors?
Yeah, right. It's to make sure the investors keep investing and hopefully buy more stock so the price goes up. So in that document, you're going to have a lot of stuff on the strategy of the company coming from the most senior person in the company, usually the chairman or the president. It's amazing how much detail is in that document because they're trying to get companies to invest in them. So they want to give them a lot of comfort that they know what they're doing. So don't neglect to, usually it's on the website. Now there are pages and pages of financials which may or may not be relevant. Usually it's too detailed and not relevant. But the general direction of the company, the strategy of the company, the philosophy of the company, any major changes in the company, who are the senior people in the company, bios on the people who are the senior people, they're all there. Your person you're meeting may be in there. Where are they in the hierarchy? What does it say about them? It's often have press releases, on the site as well, but in the annual report there may be more bio data on that particular person. Very useful document, and it doesn't take long. They're usually online. You just click on them and just go through the first page. A lot of you just delete. But that's also in your plan. It gives you a pretty good insight of the direction of the company. Would that be handy to know what the company's trying to do? Of course. If you've got an idea if they're expanding or they're condensing themselves down or they're getting rid of parts of the company or they're buying other companies, all that sort of information is pretty useful before you meet someone. So we start here with rapport, which is that first impression. Our first impression is important. Why?
It sets a boundary for the relationship further on.
Sets a boundary for the relationship. Yeah. If we go to an event and we meet someone from your company and they are really impressive, we assume everybody at your company is impressive. Unfortunately, it goes the other way. If we met someone for your company and they're a total dud, we assume everybody in your company is a dud. Right? So when you represent a company, that first impression is pretty critical for the whole organisation and also for you. Now, when we make a first impression, is it hard to unwind that normally? Yeah. How to make the first impression, do you think? How long? What do you think?
2 seconds.
How many seconds?
3.
3?
What choice is 5?
I think it's like 3 hours.
Between 5 and 2.
5 and 2, okay. We're down to 2 now, by the way. Yes?
5?
5? That's a pretty short time, isn't it? So if you think about what you just said, that we are forming first impressions which are hard to unwind in just 5 seconds, what does that tell you about the importance of your first impression? Now here's the question. If a first impression is made in the first 5 seconds and it's very hard to unwind that first impression, should we leave that first impression to chance or should we design it? What do you think?
Better to design it.
Better to design it, right? So if you think about it, how many people design their first impression that you meet? Nobody. Everyone's wandering around just turning up and then the first impression gets formed, good or bad. But we're in sales. We can't let that happen. We've got to make sure that our first impression is really working for us. Hence, saying your name correctly with a smile. Hi, my name is Greg Story. And you are?
Hi, my name is Aaron Binet.
Great to meet you, Aaron. That type of smile, friendly, outgoing, not, hi, I'm Greg Story, oh, great to meet you. Can I sell you something? That's not going to work. So it's got to be business standard. But it's also got to have a little bit of energy to it. Right? Because you come across as a very low-key, low-energy person, and you're in the sales business, that doesn't quite match up. in people's minds. They expect people in sales to have a certain amount of energy to them. So you need to lift your energy. If you're a low energy person and you're in a public event, then you might have to take that energy level up. Having built rapport, that first impression, then we go into interest and open. This is trying to find out the needs of the client. We do that through asking questions. And there's a whole process around that. Now the funny thing is, a lot of people in sales don't ask any questions. I know, this sounds amazing to me, but, and I'm a buyer of services. I'm a buyer of products. So I have people come and see me, and they're giving me their presentation, and you'd be amazed. They come in, they sit down, and for the next 30 or 40 minutes they talk. In that period of time, not one question, until they run out of steam, run out of gas. They get to the end, and I'm silent. I don't say anything. And then they're dumbfounded. So they might say, well, what do you think? It's unbelievable. So this questioning skill set in sales is absolutely the critical factor of getting clarity around what the client needs. But so few salespeople are skilled in this area, it's really amazing. Having understood what they need, then how do we present that solution in a way that's really attractive to the client? They feel, that's right, you've just told me exactly what I need to fix my problem. That's a skill in itself too. We get objections or pushback or concerns or clarifications here because maybe we didn't do a good enough job here or here. But we shouldn't be concerned about getting some pushback or some objections, because if I don't care, would I ask? And if I'm not going to buy your product anyway, or I'm not going to buy your service anyway, what do I care about finding out any more details about it? I'll just say thank you very much, goodbye. So for some salespeople, they think, oh, objections, I'm going to get objections. I'd be happy to get an objection. They would tell me, oh, there's an interest here. I perhaps haven't explained something fully, or haven't explained it in a way that's convincing, or they've brought up something I haven't even talked about. Here's an opportunity to help them understand that is not an issue for them, and we can go forward. So when you get pushback, objections, don't feel, oh, I've got a problem. You've got to think of it like, oh, great, I have interest. Okay. And so we get down to commitment, which is getting them to actually agree to go ahead. One of the problems, though, is a lot of companies who we do training for sales tell me, don't know what to do with our salespeople. They don't close and get the completion done. What they mean there is, they get through some sort of process, they get to this point, they don't ask for the order. They don't put it on the line and say, are you going to buy our product or service or not? Not that directly, but they don't ever get to that question. Why do you think that is? Why do you think some salespeople don't ask for the order? What do you think?
Because then that's the moment they might get rejected.
Yeah. What would be the problem of being rejected, Jake?
It's a learning process.
Sorry?
It's a learning process.
That's a positive one. What's the problem with being rejected?
Confidence.
Yeah, what does it do to your confidence, John?
You take it personally.
Yeah. Why do we take it personally? Yes, do you think?
I don't know, because I don't.
You don't? Fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. Why do you think we might take it personally?
Well, if it happens again and again, it's hard not to take it personally for a little bit. You start questioning
No, it's a
what
hard
you did
word.
wrong.
It's that roller coaster of emotions. It's that roller coaster of emotions. And our self-esteem is linked to our success. Right? And when we're very successful, we have a lot of self-esteem. When we're not very successful, we have less self-esteem. The two things go together. But sales is, up and down, up and down. You can be great one moment and a dud the next. One meeting's fantastic, next one's a disaster. So your self-esteem is constantly being hammered by the ebb and flow of the sales process. The clue here is they don't ask for the order because they don't want to get a no. They'd rather leave it vague. and keep their self-esteem intact. Okay. It's like goal setting. A lot of people don't set any goals because they worry if they set a goal and they don't achieve it, they've failed, and they don't want to feel a failure. So the best way not to fail, don't do anything. That's not a formula for success, by the way. Right? It seems like it's a formula for avoiding failure. That may be true, but it's not a formula for being successful either. So we need to have the confidence to say, okay. But how do we ask, okay? How do we ask for the order? How do we ask to go ahead? That's what we're going to cover in this training. Do you have any questions so far? All good? Okay, let's keep going. So this looks rather complicated, but it's not that complicated. This is the buyer over here. This is the process we're going through, and this is us over here, what we sell. As you see here, it talks about the buyer at the very first instance of meeting them being preoccupied. Why would the buyer be preoccupied, Joy, the first time we meet them? And what would they be preoccupied about, do you think?
What they just were doing the hour before, they have got to go grocery shopping as soon as they're done talking to you, they have other things on their mind.
Are buyers busy? Yes. Do you think they're busy?
Sometimes they could be.
I'm pretty busy, I can tell you. I'm a buyer. I'm busy all the time. And I've got a lot on my mind. I've got my whole personal life, I've got my family, I've got my finances, I've got my health to worry about, you know. I've got my business problems to worry about. I worry about yesterday, I worry about today, I'm worrying about the future. Everyone's like that. So when we meet people, when we first come in and we've got the appointment, we've turned up, maybe we've already met them before, so we've already got the name sheet, but we turn up to the meeting. They're not in the room. Physically they're in the room, but they're not in the room. Their mind is somewhere else. Right? They're preoccupied with other competing items, competing with us for attention. So the rapport process is a little bit of a buffer to break all of that stuff that's in their head, all that clutter, before we get into the main part of the business. Now, Japanese business normality has got that built in. If you go and have a meeting with a Japanese company, you have this horrible tasting green tea, the cheapest green tea you can possibly buy to drink, but they talk about, you know, oh, how long have you been in Japan? Like, as a foreigner, how long have you been in Japan? Where do you live? Where do you come from? There's all this sort of small talk. It's built into the culture to have some small talk. Now, probably in other cultures, there's no small talk. It's straight into it. But in Japan, they've got some small talk to try and build a bit of rapport. So, in that sense, Japanese business has got automatic rapport building in there. But we need to have that even if it's not there. If we're dealing with foreigners, it may not be there. Because at that first point, we're selling ourselves. We're selling that first impression. When we get into the first part, we've got to try and get the buyer to be talking. We'll come back to this in a moment. But we want to do less of talking and have them do more of the talking. The second part is we start getting into questioning skills, interest. They are uninterested. They are indifferent to answering our questions. Now here's the problem for sales. We need to understand them. If we can't understand them, we don't know what to give them as a solution. We can show them a lot of stuff, but it's not going to be effective. They're looking for something. What is it? The way to know what that is, questioning. Now, that's what we want. They have probably got very little interest in answering our questions. So we have to set that up. What do they think? Oh, come in and give me your pitch. Show me your stuff. Right? But that's a shotgun approach. As a salesperson, that's the last thing. I'll guarantee you now, if you go into a meeting and you're not able to ask questions and they say, look, time's limited, Greg, just take us through what you've got. The chances of that meeting being successful are slow. to low, to minimum, to almost nothing. Because you won't know how to emphasize things, what they're looking for. Basically, you're shooting in the dark here. We need to have an ability to get around that indifference. So here we start trying to understand their needs. We're selling needs. Okay? Then, as we get into the solution, they have doubt. We say this is the solution, but they think, hey, you're a salesperson. Of course you're going to say that. They don't believe it necessarily. Okay. So they may also have doubt about the value. They might think the price is too high. Does anyone ever hear that? The price is too high? Ever get that? Yeah, I get it all the time, right? The reason you get that is because we haven't shown sufficient value. If we're showing sufficient value, then the price is relative. So we start understanding that there are any issues, any objections to motive. They might be procrastinating there, they might be putting off making a decision. They may not be committed to doing something immediately. They may just be thinking about it, there's no urgency. One of the big killers of sales is the client's procrastination. And I'm like that too. I'm a buyer of services I met before. I've got a particular company who's got a proposal with me. It's interesting. It's affordable. I should do it. But I have to do a couple of things to help them to start the process. I'm so busy. I don't have time. I just do not have time. So I'm procrastinating on that sale. I will buy it. I want to buy it. I'm motivated to buy it. But I'm procrastinating because I'm too busy. You see? So even though people have what you want, they may not buy it when they should because they're procrastinating. So we, in sales, we have to convey a sense of urgency. Now, the salesperson who's dealing with me is not a salesperson, actually. This person's gotten into this role, they're now in sales, they've got no sales training background, they're not conveying an urgency. Did a lot of good follow-up, followed up with me 4 times, but never conveyed a sense of urgency to me that there's an opportunity cost for me not taking action to buy their service. And that's what happens to us in sales. If we don't have a sense of urgency to overcome this, I'll do it later, we'll do it next month, don't need to do it now, yeah, that's a nice to have, I don't need to have it right now, we'll never get the sale done. So we need to know how to convey that sense of urgency. That's what we're going to learn later. And finally, we get to commitment. They're reluctant to commit. Why are people reluctant to commit, Greg? What do you think? What's stopping them from saying, yes, let's go ahead? What's holding them back?
Going back to the value, they may not see the value.
May not see the value? Yeah. Joy, what else? What's holding them back?
Timing?
Timing, yeah. Timing means?
Maybe wrong time in the fiscal year.
Wrong timing for them, yeah. Eunice, what's holding them back? Why aren't they going to commit? Why are they reluctant?
Maybe they need approval from the higher ups.
Yes, it may not be their decision. It may be someone above them. They have to put things forward. Yeah. Darren, what's holding them back?
Maybe they don't want to make a mistake. Find
Yeah.
out about it.
Have they made a mistake before, do you think?
Yeah, probably.
Have they bought something or paid for something and realised, oh, that didn't work, and that wasn't sufficient to our needs? Yeah, what else is holding them back?
So the guys have covered pretty much everything I was thinking.
Sorry, what was
The
that?
guys have covered pretty much everything I was thinking of at the moment, so.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of fear associated with making that commitment. So, what we sell is the importance of making a decision now. It's related to this overcoming procrastination through a sense of urgency. But you need to make a decision. Now, the point is, if you're trying to manipulate people, if you're just trying to con people, if you're worried about your big bonus, you know, making a lot of money, hitting your targets, it's all going to be about you. If that is not how you're playing in the sales area, and you're actually worried about them, if you generally see your solution as helping their business, you want it now for them, because you know this is going to grow their business faster if they do it earlier. It's going to grow it bigger if they start now. If that's how you think, you have a lot of confidence to say, We need to do it now. We need to make the decision now because this is the best for you. Right? See the difference? This is the best for me, I get paid, versus this is the best for you. You do better, and therefore I do better. That mentality is the difference between a successful salesperson and a not so successful salesperson. Long-term view, build a trust, build a relationship, someone they can rely on. They'll come back to you every time. It won't be a one sale. And trust me, the cost, whenever they calculate the cost of getting a new client against the cost of keeping an old client, it's like this. Cost of the new client is huge. And having a consistent client who continuously buys is gold. The only way you get that is if you're driving for a decision that is based on their best interests, not your best interests. So this is where your mentality has to switch. What am I doing this for? If you're doing it for the short-term gain, get out of sales right now because you will not be successful. Flip your mind. If you look at the solution for the client as the key thing you're after, then partnership. You see? That's where we're going with all this. We're trying to get to become a partner, a trusted partner. They will call on every time, every year, forever. That's the idea. That's not a simple thing to do. After we do the sale, there's also follow through. What would be typical follow through? What would be some typical follow through? So it might be, we've said certain things are going to happen by a certain time. They must happen. Or you would let them know it's not going to happen if there's some problem. That's good follow through. Also, if there is a sale made, but it's a one-off, okay, then you've made the sale. They've possibly had, if it's an ad or a video or whatever, they haven't had the reaction they expected, and they may not do another one. So what do we do then? In terms of follow-up, we need to schedule the next time we call them. Now the tricky period here is, generally speaking, if you don't get further business, probably 6 to 9 months is the sort of key period to go back to them. Because usually not too much changes in the first 6 months when you met them to have a different need on their part. If you leave it to 12 months, you may find your competitors have already been around there and have sold them on the next deal, and you're not going to get the business. So somewhere in that 6 to 9 months, it's a good period to schedule in your diary, recontact Greg about the next step. Because you'll find 6 is a little bit too early, 12 is a bit too long, 6 to 9. What you really, and you'll love to hear this, oh, good timing. We're just doing our planning for the next stage. Is that good to hear that? I love hearing that. Great timing, we're now under planning provisions for the next financial year. Oh yeah, we're actually just about to start, we just started the process. Yeah, we're now talking to companies, vendors about what we're going to do next. You love to hear that. What you don't like to hear is, oh yeah, we've already done it. Oh yeah, we've already committed. Oh yeah, we went with Eurobiz instead. Oh, we went with somebody else. That's what you don't want to hear. So that follow-up, the timing of that, because not every sale will lead to the next sale. And it may be you don't even get a sale. It actually, in the end, you don't get any commitment. Same thing though. Whether you get the commitment or you don't, you've got to follow them up. But you've got to have a schedule to do that. You've got to have a diary to do that. I don't care how you do it in your diary, electronic or physical or whatever, but do it and have it in there. You look at your calendar, right, okay, here we are in March, right, September, October, right, October. I'm going to make a call. I'm going to reconnect. And sometimes you'll find too that the person you've been dealing with is leaving the country. Would it be useful for them to introduce you to their successor? Yes. Yes, it would be. Right. So if you can get them before they leave and get them to do that, even if it's just an email introduction, much better than you trying to do it cold. Right. So, but you won't know that if you don't have that diarised follow-up to do that.